All right, folks, welcome to another What's Your Story. Man, I'm so excited. Mike Smith is with me. Dude, he is, he's just been an inspiration for me, to be honest, in the middle of doing all this stuff from back in the day, the Craze fanboy days, to writing movie reviews, media mics, just so many things that have gone on and our paths have crossed. It's great to be able to get a chance to catch up with you, my friend. Thanks for doing this with me, hanging out.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
It's awesome, man. Well, so those folks out there that don't know anything about you, who Mike Smith is and all that, give everybody a little elevator pitch of who you are and how we got to know you a little bit.
Let's see. I was but a wee teenager in Tampa, Florida when I met Nolan Canova, who eventually started crazefanboy.com. I used to write film reviews for the high school newspaper. When I moved to Kansas City, and Nolan started his site, I wrote film reviews for him. I was writing reviews for the Leavenworth Times. I've done stuff on television, done stuff on radio. In 2006, I met Mike Zancarelli at a Jaws event, and we talked for a while, and we formed, originally it was called moviemics.com. We concentrated solely on films, and then Mike was able to finagle interviews with pretty much anyone that had anything to do with The Walking Dead, and we became Media Mics. So now we cover film, television, music, streaming, books, theater. So we've been around 13 years, and we keep growing.
Yeah, it's awesome. You have a couple shows over on Facebook that you've been doing that kind of cross over into some other platforms, things like that too, that kind of thing.
One is Back in the Day,
yeah,
and the other is Let's Talk Jaws Live. They both run on Thursdays.
So let's spin our wheels there for a minute. What happened with Jaws? Like, why was it so transformative for you? And folks, I do apologize. A Florida rainstorm. Mike will know all about those. Like,
yes.
it's all of a sudden, it was perfectly quiet. Everything was fine. Yeah. And like 5 minutes ago, the rain starts, and now thunder starts. So if I completely disappear, Mike, I promise I'll come back. We'll figure it out.
I understand. We were having we had lunch with my nephew and his family the other day, and they had just come back from Florida.
Yeah.
And they said, we might move there. I said, it's going to rain at dinner time every day, but other than that, it's fine.
Yeah.
So when I was turning 15, I saw a ad on television for Dog Day Afternoon, and I was for some reason entranced by Al Pacino yelling "Attica, Attica." So my dad said, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" I said, let's go see a movie." So he dropped me off, and when I got to the box office, I was obviously too young to see an R-rated film. And as I stood there dejectedly in the hallway at the University Mall, my head hung low and sad face, and the girl in the box office, got up in that little microphone that you can never hear, and she goes, "Have you seen Jaws yet?" And I hadn't. We actually moved to Florida the week Jaws opened. I spent the whole summer on the beach with my grandfather in St. Pete, going over there every day. And people would say, "Oh, watch out, buddy, Jaws is going to get you." And I had no idea what they were talking about. So I hadn't seen Jaws, so I went and saw it. And I don't know what it was. I really can't pinpoint what it is about that movie. But it just, to be punished, it hooked me. I like to say it was when Ben Gardner's head popped up and I threw popcorn over everybody behind me. But I'd seen a few films, but I had never been affected by a film like that. And I haven't since. I mean, I've seen other films that I love, but, nothing that made me want to start, web pages and Facebook groups and write books like Jaws.
Yeah, it's such a game changer in hindsight. I know we did a stream a few months ago where I was going through, and you would be able to speak because you were a little bit older than me. You could be able to speak more like the cultural impact, like everything changed. Like they mass marketed this. It ended up being like that first film. Everybody talked about being the first summer blockbuster, but more than that, it was also like lunchboxes and T-shirts, and it was all of that type of phenomenon. It's kind of like it was really kind of a precursor for Star Wars later on, to see how this stuff would kind of blossom and create this sort of like ongoing movie audience showing up like week after week after week. It was crazy.
Yeah, because before Jaws, a lot of, summer was like the dumping grounds for studios. We have product, let's get them out. If it's hot outside, they want to get air conditioned. I mean, the James Bond films, especially the Connery ones, they all came out in January.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't. And then Jaws showed that with clever marketing, that you could draw people in, and then it became, every summer was, whether it was Star Wars or Smokey and the Bandit or, hell, Titanic was going to be a summer film, but the special effects got delayed. So it came out at Christmas, which was probably beneficial for it. But, Titanic was going to be a summer blockbuster because they figured that's when they could get everybody in the theater.
We're kind of wrapping up or in the middle of this whole Shark Week month. Like now it's hijacked. Just forget about weeks. It's now a month thing, depending on if you watch Nat Geo or not. But is it still kind of like strange? Because you were really kind of ahead of the game on this shark love thing, man. Like this shark obsession that's kind of taken root now with Discovery started. I mean, it's been like 30 years, right? But what was it about? What is it about sharks? What is it about sharks that's got people just like fascinated, just really engaged?
I want to say, I think it's because you can go see a movie with Godzilla or King Kong or werewolves. But I think Jaws hooked people because it could really happen. There are sharks out there, and you see on the news all the time people that are, well, I don't want to say attacked because some nature group said it's offensive to say attacked. So you see a lot of shark people encounters more recently, and it's that fear. It's I'm pretty sure that I will never be attacked by a shark because that would be too ironic. Jaws fan killed by shark. They'll never,
author of Jaws book bitten by
shark. But I think about it. I always wonder what's down there. In Florida, you go out there and you got to shuffle your feet so you don't step on the stingrays and everything else. You never know what's going to bump into you down there. So.
It gets you paranoid too. Gotta be honest. I'm like this. Like you can get a lot of, especially when you go further out. Like it's one thing if you're just going to do waist deep, whatever. You start actually getting out there, right? It's anything touching. You could just be seaweed or a shark. It doesn't matter. It all feels the same when you don't know what it is and you're out 10, 15 feet deep. So yeah,
exactly.
So as you kind of move through, and you just briefly went through that resume a little bit about like going into like the writer mode. What instigated you to like write your first movie review or like, hey, listen, I could do this? Or was it just like on a whim?
It was kind of on a whim. I joined the high school newspaper. I was always creative. I like to write stuff, but the newspaper class, as it were, your meeting when you talked about everything, it was the class right before lunch. And so we would come to class and then we would say, oh, we're going to go out and try to sell ads. And then we'd go, because now kids can go anywhere. But back then you couldn't go off campus for lunch. So, we'd go to Subway or go across the street, Steak and Shake, and we'd have lunch. And that's what I did it. And then I wrote a couple little things. And when I was, junior year, must have been junior year. Steve Otto, who was the film critic of the Tampa Times, who had gone to my high school, called me and said, "Do you want to come to a press junket?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And it was for Rocky, and I got to see how everybody interacted and asked questions, and it really got my attention. So I put more effort into writing. And then I didn't really do anything. I did some creative stuff at home, but I didn't do reviews or anything. And then once I moved to Kansas, my son was playing Little League Baseball and then American Legion. And I would write up what happened and send it to the local paper because the kids like to see their name in the paper. And I wrote it so well, according to the editor, that they published it verbatim. They didn't have to edit it. And one day I said to him, "You guys should have a film critic." And he goes, "It's your job." So that was 99. So I've been doing it for, almost 25 years.
Is it how do like the friends and family? It's kind of like, you're just the movie guy who sees movies before we get to see them kind of guy?
I am.
Yeah. Do you get little battles over who gets to be your plus one?
Usually the only battle is what we see. I have several writers that write for us. But one of them, Jeremy Warner, he's a young man. He's probably mid-30s. But like if it would be like Doctor Strange or The Notebook, and I'll just use that as an example. I know they don't call Brandon and say that they weren't even in the same year. I'm going to see The Notebook because I know my wife will not enjoy Doctor Strange. So that's really the only thing. My plus one's always the same, unless it's a superhero movie and there's nothing else, then I can take a friend.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Craziest like press memory or something weird that you just like it's one of those stories you could share?
Well, there's two. One was when they screened the musical Phantom of the Opera, and for whatever reason, they had security guards with night vision goggles in the theater. And I remember sitting there, and I was on the aisle, and I looked up, and there was a guy literally standing above me like this, watching me. Okay. All right. Trust me, sir, I'm not going to pirate this film. Another one that's a fun story I like to tell because it ended okay. It was the M. Night Shyamalan film, The Last Airbender. And we're sitting down, and all of a sudden these two guys, a big tall guy, a little short guy, they get up in front of the theater, in front of the screen, no announcement, nothing, and they start doing martial art moves. And I said to my wife and to the people in the row with us, I said, "What the hell is going on?" And then when they were done, they bowed and came back, and they were sitting in the row in front of us. And the lady sitting there leaned over to the little guy, who I guess it was her date, and she said, "That guy behind you was making fun of you." And he turned around and he says, "What's your problem?" I said, "I don't have a problem." I said, "I just have no idea who you are or what you were doing." And he looks at me very serious, like Master Po in Kung Fu. And he says, "One should never mock another man's passion." And then I stood up and said, "I wasn't mocking it, but if you want to talk about it." And then the wife got yelling, and then we just left. So I have yet to see The Last Airbender because I left. Because I knew, number one, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the film because I'd just be staring at the back of that guy's head the whole time. And then I also thought, though I heard it wasn't a very good film, I also thought that would affect my judgment if I liked it or not. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, the night vision goggle thing happened to us. This was press very early on. There was a miscommunication on the arrival time, so we were kind of like right at the edge or kind of late, so the place was completely packed. So we didn't get to sit where press for some reason. We sat really high. And they had the night vision goggle, and it was so distracting because they would just walk over and grab somebody. Yeah. And I was like, what is happening? And because we got there late, we probably weren't told, or we had missed the announcement of, blah, 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 blah. And we just turned our phones off anyway. But reality was, it was my first experience with the night vision goggles. It was during a screening of Red 2, the Bruce Willis sequel. The Red. Yeah. And that was the first time of like the goggles and people getting thrown out and stuff. So yeah, press screenings and junket stuff it takes some getting used to. A lot of people would ask questions. It is fun watching the faces of people, who probably been standing in line for a couple hours trying to get into some screening. You just walk right past your jeans and your t-shirts, and they're looking at you like, "Well, who do you think you are?" I'm like, I'm just a dude with a notepad.
Right.
I'm just a monkey right with a typewriter.
Excuse me, I have to get to my saved reserved seat. Yes.
Yes, yes, my special section right here. Yes, yes, yes. Um, what was it like transitioning to like online? Because obviously you wrote for Nolan and Craze Fanboy for a long, long time. Obviously, writing for newspapers is one thing. When you transition to online, is there really much of a difference for you, or is it just the way of the world?
The biggest difference with Media Mics is that we have to, number one, we have to have content, and more importantly, we have to have good content,
Mm-hmm.
because there are a million websites out there and a million people on YouTube. Here's my film minute, that kind of thing. So it's kind of made us, not that we were writing poorly before, but it really makes us look at what we do. And I find myself editing myself more. I find myself writing a review and then going back 10 minutes later and reading it and then changing things. Oh, this reads better this way. So I think, and because, it's in Leavenworth, Kansas, the only people reading Leavenworth Times are the people in Leavenworth, Kansas. Media Mics, we've got people all over the world that go to our site, and you don't want the guy in Italy to say, "Oh, what a crappy site." So
right, good point, very good point. Like everything you do could be the first and only time someone sees the site, so you want to try to make a good impression. I get you. That makes sense.
Somebody asked Joe DiMaggio once why he, even later in his career, why he hustled all the time. And he said basically the same thing. He said, because there might be a kid out there in the stands who never saw me play before. And that's the way I look at it. I assume that whoever's reading this is the first time they read it, and I want them to come back.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying to get better, increase my conscientiousness, and improve in that arena. Jordan said the same thing. Jordan said, I do what I do because it could be the one time the kid saved up enough money to come see me play. You know what I mean? It's like he just had this certain element, and we all know he was hyper competitive anyway, but that was an interesting way to sell it. So I like that. I like that a lot. So, so you're doing your shows over on Facebook, and I'll get all the links from you. Make sure I have the right links and things like that. What's it been like transitioning into doing live streaming?
It's been fun. We're also on YouTube. The Let's Talk Jaws live shows are. It's different, but I really enjoy it because I can interact. Mm-hmm. Like here, we're interacting. My original co-host and producer got a new computer a year ago and got instantly hacked. And a year later is still off the grid. She's had to change her phone number 4 times. She's had to get a new social security number.
Wow.
So for the past almost year, it was just me. It was just me like this. Like if you're just looking at half the screen, looking into a camera and talking and reading people's comments. But I missed, and now I have a new co-host, Nate Jones, on both shows, who also produces the shows. And it's so much more fun to not listen to me all the time, to have other people, to bring on guests, to get their opinions, to interact, to tell jokes, to tell stories. So it's fun. It's enjoyable because when I write, a lot of times, sometimes when you write something, you might write it in a certain style, but somebody reads it, they don't get that. Oh, he meant this, or he was trying to be funny. When you're, face to face, or just even on a podcast, they can hear you. They can hear the tone of your voice. They can hear you're trying to make a joke. They can hear when you're trying to be serious. So that's, I think, is the biggest benefit of, podcasts and streaming and being online.
What do you think is a word of advice you'd have for somebody that's either a noob or they're their own worst enemy? They just haven't gotten started.
Take the time. You if you don't try it, you can't fail. Don't, what's the word I'm trying to look? Don't procrastinate. Don't, like the poster used to say, don't put off to tomorrow what you can do today. You're never going to know if you're any good if you don't do it. If you don't, get a webcam and go to like StreamYard or Be Live and just do a little show, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's just you talking about my favorite record album. Give it a try. Let people see it, and hopefully, though, if they have criticism, it'll be constructive. They won't be mean. There are people out there that are mean. I can tell you about the review I got on Amazon for the Jaws 2 book by a guy who left a 1-star review. But his comment was, I didn't read this book, but I saw the film and the film sucked. So I'm pretty sure the book sucks. And I was like, what?
How did he get to leave a review if he didn't read the book? Didn't he buy the book? I thought you had to buy it to get to do a review. I thought it was you couldn't do it otherwise. That's weird.
Back then they could. And I
okay, so it could be okay. Yeah.
I contacted Amazon and they said, well, we don't remove, customer reviews. And I said, it doesn't make sense. I said, let's say I don't like cats. What if I go back and leave a negative review on every cat book on Amazon? And they were like, oh, we hope you don't do that. Well, I didn't.
I want to hear that phone call. How long it took Mike to get a human being to basically make a cat analogy. Oh, I hope you don't do that. Don't do that.
But go for it. Like Rocky 5. Go for it. Give it a try. And if you fail, at least you tried. And if you tried your best and it didn't work out, you've done it.
So talk a little bit about that Jaws 2 book. Like what was the precursor there to say, I'm going to put some pen to paper and do a book?
In 2005 at the first Jaws Fest, some friends and I, we actually rented and lived in the cabin that Steven Spielberg lived in when they were filming Jaws. So every day we got the shower in the Spielberg shower. And we ended up having people over all the time over to the cabin and wanted to look around and see stuff. And I met a young man named Jim Beller who had an idea for a book. And here we go. 6 years later, it's 2011. Matt Taylor, who lived on the island, has written this amazing book, and it's called Jaws: Memories from Martha's Vineyard. And it's told, the stories are told from the people on the island with a lot of local photos. And we were just at the book signing, and I was talking to Lou Pisano, who has since passed. And we were talking to Tom Dunlop, who is Timmy in Jaws 2, but is now an accomplished author. And Matt came up and we said, are you going to do a Jaws 2 book? And he said, no, this was too hard. This was 5 years ago. So I said to Lou, we should do a Jaws 2 book. And Tom Dunlop said, nobody wants to buy a Jaws 2 book. And I was like, oh, no, Tom, if we really do it like this book. And he says, well, maybe if you do an ebook. And I said, no, we're going to do a real book. And he said, I tell you what, if you guys can show me that you're actually serious, I'll give you all the help I can. So Lou and I got together. We came up with an idea, came up with an outline, pitched it to our publisher. He was all for it. And it's a long time, 4 years. 4 years later, we had a book.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. It is an interesting process. What was the process like for you? Like how did that work? You work for an outline, thing like that? How did you is it write every day? How was the process for writing?
The writing process was easy for me. The hardest thing was tracking people down. Thank God for the internet. I don't know how they did this in the 70s when you wanted to do, let's say in the 70s, you wanted to do a book on Gone with the Wind. How are you going to, course, most of them are dead, but how would you even look to find Butterfly McQueen? Well, we know Butterfly McQueen because she used to live in Tampa. So that's a bad analogy because when I was 16, I knew where to find Butterfly McQueen. But we set out to get everybody's story. So, and I'm very proud of the fact that not only do we have everybody who was alive at the time we did the book that are in the opening credits, except for John Williams, who never said no, but never had time to talk to us. And we also were able to track down all the actors, the kids that had been cast originally and been fired, and the original director. And I went out to UCLA in this secret room under the library. That was like, it was like the opening of Get Smart. To get down there, you had to go through a hallway, and a door opened, then it closed behind you. You had to go down an elevator. And I got to read the very original, the very first script. And it just took on a life of his own. And because of that book, I mean, I have made so many friends, people that when I was 17 and watching on the big screen and never even imagined doing a book are now my friends. Jeff Kramer, Gary Springer. Gary Springer just texted me today. It's just an amazing experience. And it's, they always say it's a labor of love, but it was a labor of love. It was something we were able to talk about, something that we loved and able to share that love with others.
It's beautiful. What a beautiful process too. And you get to know that you're friends with the guy that played Andy. It's just a cool, I don't know, a cool sort of element to all this that, people don't think about. It's like, you just never know how life will forge and change things for you. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Cause I remember, we had kind of first interacted back in the Craze fanboy days, and here we are fast forward, decades later. And I'm like, let me hit up Mike, see what's going on. I've caught a few of I can't always comment. A lot of times I'm listening in the car or something like that, if I'm driving or whatever, to the different shows that you do and things like that. I'm like, you know what? Shark stuff's like an excuse. Like, it's Shark Week. Everyone will be looking up shark stuff. I'll be talking about sharks. It's an excuse to just throw something out there and see how it flies and introduce Mike to everybody and that kind of thing. Do you have that every year? Or like every year, it seems like, the phone starts ringing because it's shark time?
No, I usually get hit up when people are going to conventions. Okay. I just heard there's one in Lexington, Kentucky, that Richard Dreyfuss and Jeff Kramer, Jeff Voorhees are going to be at. So I'm trying to get out there. But I just, I love talking Jaws. I get emails all the time from people. The Daily Jaws, which is based in the UK, I'm been honored. I write for them, and last 2 weeks ago, to commemorate the upcoming Blu-ray release of Jaws 2, Ross Williams, who runs the Daily Jaws, and we did an audio commentary for Jaws 2. Awesome. And I was just checking it today. It's on YouTube, and we've already had 5,000 hits, which I think is amazing that 5,000 people have put the movie in and listened to us talk. So,
that's a fun thing to think about, isn't it? That's fun. Yeah, that's great. It's awesome. So I'll try to remember to make sure I'm making a note here. I'm trying to make a copy and make sure I got the Daily Jaws link to make sure we put that in the chat there for you guys. Make sure you get that so you can go over and check that out. Because Jaws, it's just the legacy of that franchise. Do you think they'll ever go back to the well and mess with it more?
No.
I don't think so.
No. Jaws 3 and Jaws of Revenge were out of Spielberg's hands because the studio owned the property. I always hear, well, what happened if they remade Jaws? Number one, it would be terrible because the studio would insist that the shark shows up right away. CGI shark. Yep. And that was the original plan. That was the original plan. When Chrissy gets eaten, the shark was supposed to be there, but it didn't work. And part of what makes Jaws such a good film is that they had to use different tricks, and then with the music, because sometimes you heard the music, the shark was there, but then all of a sudden you heard the music and the shark wasn't there. So, having the shark all the time, I just don't think Spielberg would allow it. Maybe 100 years from now, maybe they'll try it. But film's coming up. It's it's going to be its 50th anniversary in less than 2 years.
Yeah.
And I just don't. I just can't. I can't imagine it going back because what else? What else can you do?
Right. Yeah, there's big shark movies constantly being done, so it's like, why are you going to try to taint the legacy of this franchise more? So, what was one of the biggest surprises or takeaways from your Jaws 2 research and process that even to this day you're still kind of like, wow, yeah?
I never realized how cutthroat Hollywood is, I guess.
Okay.
That's the one thing. And I did public relations and film marketing for 20 years. And I was on the other side of junkets. I was putting junkets together and, dealing with people at the studio. But I was always peripheral after the film had been done. And one of the great experiences with the book, John Hancock, who was the original director. Number one, he and his wife, Dorothy just passed this past January, invited me to their farm in Indiana to talk about their Jaws 2 experience. And the first thing that struck me was these people are inviting me to their home to talk about what has to be a horrible time in their life. I mean, one day you're the director of the sequel to the greatest film, or at the time, greatest to me, most successful film ever made, and the next day you're not. And to hear all the stories about how everybody was just treated, it was just money. The Universal was looking for money. They didn't care. They wanted a good product, but they didn't care. But the cutthroat thing, and this is something that John and Dorothy didn't even tell me. I remember we were talking, John said, I was on the island in the morning, and that night we were in Italy. That's all he ever said.
Wow.
And then a month or two later, I interviewed Michael Butler, who was a cinematographer. And we were talking, and he says, it was horrible what they did to John. And I said, well, yeah. I said, letting him go, it's got to be hard. He says, no, the way they did it. And I said, well, what do you mean? Because I just heard I was here, then I was there.
Yeah.
The producers had come to the island. They had a production meeting that morning. They shook his hand, all right, have a good day. So John and Dorothy get in a car, and they're with Michael Butler, and they're heading to what they think is the set. The car takes them to the airport. While they were having the meeting, Universal had all their stuff packed up in their house and taken to the airport. And they were gone.
It is. Wow.
They couldn't even say, hey, we're letting you go. They just said, hey, have a good day.
Wow. Yeah. Cutthroat stuff, huh? Yeah. That's crazy. Wow. So what are your thoughts on, the other two films? Because my members and my subscribers are trying to turn against me and make me watch Jaws 3, which I wanted to leave as a kid. I remember when Jaws 3 was in the theater, and I can't remember if it was my mom or my grandma was with me, and I was like, can we go? I'm good. Like, this is terrible. Like, I was ready to go. And they're turning on me. I said, I'm taking Jaws Revenge off the table. I'm not sitting through that. But they're really pushing the Jaws 3 because of the 3D experience, and I did see it in the theater and all that. I'm like, oh, so how do you handle that, man? I mean, you love the original so much. It's like these two are they're brutal.
It's for what it is. Jaws 3 is a good, like a lot of films. If there are sequels, if you don't have Jaws, I think Jaws 2 would be, as much as people love it, I think it would get more respect if it didn't have Jaws in the title. If they just called it Shark or something.
Yeah, it has some. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Jaws builds up your expectations. A quick plug for SharkCon in Tampa this weekend. They are showing Jaws 3D, and they're going to have Leah Thompson and Lou Gossett there.
Yeah.
So if you want to go see it over there at Tampa Fairgrounds. But I enjoy it. I know what Joe is trying to do, and he played very heavily on the 3D aspect, because 3D was just kind of coming back in 82, 83. Jaws of Revenge. I don't know why I like the banana boat scene. I don't know what it is about it, but the shark jumping out of the water and grabbing that kid off the banana boat. It had its moment. It has its moments, but it's also a film you want to make fun of it. Every time you see a continuity error, like a drinking game, you'd be drunk halfway through.
Oh yeah, it's pretty brutal. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I don't know that I could sit through that one again. I just went through Deep Blue Sea and Open Water, films like that. So, do you have another favorite shark movie that's not part of this franchise?
I like Open Water. I like Deep Blue Sea was good, but you can see how the CGI sharks.
Yeah, it did not hold up well for me at all.
And
it was really rough.
Looking at that, how it would be with Jaws, like when Meg came out a couple years ago. It was like,
I'll see. I enjoy Meg, and because Meg doesn't seem like it's taking itself that serious. Like Meg seemed like it was like, okay, we're aware of how silly we are. We're there. They seem very self-aware of being more like an action movie. The shark is just a giant creature, not so much like a serious shark movie. Right. Open Water is a beautiful like micro budget film, right? It's like a micro budget. So I the very beginning, it's like this total indie filmmaking cliches, right? The close-ups of the door handle, just fill in the space, and then of course he obviously had planned out how he was going to cut all the water sequences, and I think it's really, I was quite impressed actually in my rewatch of that. But yeah, no, 47 Meters Down is out there. I've never actually watched The Shallows. That's the one that I'm like, how did I ever not see this? But I don't think I have, because I enjoy Blake Lively, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I've seen this. So we'll see.
It was okay. Again, the shark, for some reason the more they try to make the shark look real in CGI, the more it looks fake to me. But yeah, it was entertaining. I mean, there are a few entertaining films out there, but I have to compare it to
the greatest
Granddaddy.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty awesome. What are you kind of working on now? Towards now? What's the next chapter of the Mike Smith era of all of this?
I am pitching an idea to my publisher this week about a book, another beloved film that turns 30 years old next year. Nothing's set in stone yet, so I don't want to mention it because I don't want someone to watch this and go, "Oh, that's a damn good idea. I'm going to get a contract. I'll write a book about that." I also have a Jaws 50 group on Facebook, which already has almost 6,000 members, and it is geared to get fans excited about the 2025 50th anniversary of Jaws. Hopefully there will be an event. I have talked with the people at Martha's Vineyard Chamber of Commerce, and they would like to have an event, but it's obviously the ball's in NBC Universal's hands, and it'll be another year at least before they even really start talking seriously about it. But I'm just trying to get the word out to fans because they share their ideas and what would you want to see, and it's a very fun page, and it's no drama allowed, nobody, no hate speech. It's just a way for people to talk about Jaws. And so far it's 9 months, 8-9 months. It's really, so far it's run smoothly, and it's amazing. I literally have fans from all over the world that join, Italy and Bosnia and Chile, and it's just amazing the impact that this film has 50 years later. I mean, I can't think, maybe on one hand I can name films that 50 years later are still as popular and still gain new generations of fans.
It's true. The culture impact and just the legacy of something that good and well made. And yeah, it's really, it's quite incredible indeed. So, as someone who's like been doing reviews and all of this for so long, what's your kind of take on where we're at with like modern cinema? It seems like there's sort of kind of like been a degradation of like the hero's journey, and it seems very misguided by like, I don't know, cultural type tropes and things like that, rather than like good storytelling. And it's more like, I don't want to try to blame just the, chasing the cash, because that's kind of always been the case in some ways, but it's like it's just different now. The feel, everything. What's your kind of take on some of that kind of stuff with some of the modern cinema?
I think there are still, I mean, some really well-made action films like Mission Impossible. I really, really liked, but the bad part about the pandemic was that movie theaters closed, but because they closed, and a lot of these tentpole films like The Flash and Top Gun Maverick, they were held back, but that gave more independent filmmakers a chance to get their product out, to get it on streaming. And when theaters started opening up sporadically to get on the screen and get more people to pay attention. But it's all, unfortunately, it's all money driven. If they've built theater complexes, so big now that if you've got 24 screens, you might have Mission Impossible on 8 of them, and you'll play it for a couple weeks, but then you've guaranteed the studio you'll play it for 4 weeks. So maybe you'll go down to 6 screens, but you're only going to have business for 2 of the screens. So the rest of the time, when you could be showing a smaller film, you can't, because you've got to have something in that auditorium. Right. And, and also I'll get on my Grandpa Simpson old man soapbox. I think the movie-going experience is dead. Kansas City is the home of AMC. And, they had all those commercials last year with Nicole Kidman, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But it's movie going. I used to love going to the movies because you could go, like if a movie opened on Friday and you were in school, you would pick one person who after school went to the theater and they got in line and they bought tickets, but they probably bought tickets for the 7:00 show because everything is sold out. You got to the theater at 5:30, you brought him a hamburger because he's been there all day. You stood in line and you talked to all the people around you, and you talked to them about what you expected to see, and you were so excited. And then you sat in the theater and to watch, back before when there were big theaters, now they're, if it's a 150 seat theater, it's considered large, but 900 seat, 1,000 seat theaters, and it's packed, and you would see other people reacting the way that you react. And it kind of, okay, it's not, they get it. They're enjoying it. And I do. You had personalized service at the concession stands. You had ushers that would come in and walk the theater and tell the guy in front of you to take or the guy behind you to take his feet off the back of your chair. And now there's nothing. It's you get your own popcorn, you get your own drink. You got to wander down the hall and try to find the auditorium. It's I love the presentation. I mean, no matter how ornate your home theater system is, you're never going to, unless you're a zillionaire, you're never going to have a 40-foot screen in your living room with that kind of sound. And that's part of the film experience. But you got to have more. You got to have more than just the film. You got to bring people in to enjoy it more, to get that experience, because otherwise that's why theaters are dying.
It's rough out there, that's for sure.
Because people are watching on streaming.
Well, and some of the movies just aren't. I don't know. I feel like it's, first off, this summer has been rough because I feel like there's a lot of movies that are just so bloated. They're over 2 hours long. I'm like, golly, this should be, we got 20 extra minutes, we got 30 extra minutes, we could trim. And for me, it's like, oh, how much more money you want me to put into all this, where I feel like I could have just waited for streaming for this because it was just so much longer than it needed to be and things like that. The quality issue, I guess, and maybe what I'm trying to get at a
Mission
little bit.
Impossible is almost 3 hours long.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah.
And I did not know, and I think they didn't really, release the logo until that day. I did not realize it was a part one until I got in the theater, and then they had up on the screen. I said part one, and my friend says, "Yeah, they announced that today." But I'm thinking, oh my God, this is gonna be a 5 hour. I mean, going in knowing it was almost 3 hours long, I'm thinking to myself, God, this is gonna be like a 6 hour movie, and it was good. I mean, it flew by. The action is great, but the days of quiet filmmaking and sticking to the story and concentrating more on people than explosions. I just don't think, there's people out there that are still trying to do it, but I don't think it's going to be like the 70s. The 60s and 70s to me are the best times in Hollywood, because they were making, they got the big musicals in the beginning of the 60s, and then they kind of, got to more serious fare. And then the 70s was Scorsese and Spielberg and Coppola and George Lucas, and they made more personal films. And then all of a sudden, Marvel, which I don't mean. I love the Marvel films.
You skip the 80s, which is my sweet spot. But I'm picking up what you're saying. I'm picking it up. I'm good. So a lot of times critics don't go back and see movies. Like, we get in free, we see our movie, and a lot of us don't go back. Is there one where you've gone back and seen a couple times?
Spider-Man.
Okay.
No Way Home. I would go see the Indiana Jones again. I would go see the Flash again. Those are the more recent ones. But yeah.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Well, Mike Smith, everybody, listen, all the links are there. I'll try to make sure I got them all. Mike, if I miss the links, you'll feel free to let me know. Make sure I get them from you. But listen, it's been awesome to get to chat with you for a little bit, get to know you, to this audience, let everybody know you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you check out those Thursday shows. Check out his book. Tons of stuff. Man is a Renaissance man. He's doing so many different things. So make sure you connect to him. Tell him hey. And it's been awesome to be able to hang out here with you guys, folks. Thanks so much for watching again. And Mike, thanks again for your time, man. It's awesome.
Thank you, bud. Thanks for asking me.